Welcome, listeners, to Echo Tales, where the quiet tragedies of the human heart echo longest. Tonight, we uncover a story of silent dissolution, of a love that withered not in a storm, but in the chilling frost of indifference. This is the confession of a man named Clifton, whose journey through betrayal led him to a profound, solitary awakening. Listen closely, for some echoes resonate far longer than any scream. She didn't see me. That's the insidious part, the fragment that keeps playing on a relentless loop in the theater of my mind. She didn't see me standing by the staircase, clutching a half-melted plastic cup and a heart that felt somehow heavier than my entire body. The music pulsed loudly, a vibrant, distracting noise, but I swear I could hear her laughter from across the room. Not her polite practice chuckle, but her real laugh, the one that hadn't echoed in our kitchen for months. And there she was. Her hands rested lightly on his shoulders, his lips brushing the curve of her neck, their bodies swaying together as if no one else in the universe existed. For the first time in our 10-year marriage, I didn't feel like her husband. I felt like a silent, unwelcome bystander at someone else's love story. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Whatever danced between them transcended mere physical contact. It was comfort, a shared rhythm, a slow, insidious betrayal, so seamlessly executed it almost appeared innocent. My instinct screamed for a scene. I could have unleashed a torrent of rage, confronted them, shattered glass and hearts right there in the swirling chaos of the party. But I didn't. Instead, I simply leaned against the cool wall and watched. Just watched. 4 minutes and 17 seconds. A lifetime unfolding in slow motion. Then I turned. I walked past a girl who, seeing my pale face, asked if I was okay. Just tired, I murmured and left. She didn't text, didn't call. By the time she eventually stumbled home, barefoot, jacket missing, eyes hollowed by the night, I was already sitting on the floor of our bedroom, staring into the gaping maw of our closet. My side, once overflowing, was already neatly empty. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice thin. "Packing," I replied, my gaze fixed on a neatly folded shirt. "It's not what you think," she insisted. I offered no response, not even a glance. She cried for 46 minutes. I counted every single one. She cried as if the concept of truth had just been invented, as if her tears possessed the power to rewrite the tableau I had witnessed. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer comfort. I just continued to fold shirts into the suitcase with a chilling calm that always frightens people more than any shout. She kept repeating her mantra. It wasn't what it looked like. As if she truly believed I hadn't seen her body mold to his like clay. As if she thought my silence signaled confusion. But I wasn't confused. I was unequivocally, irrevocably done. Her voice cracked as she finally uttered my name. "Clifton, please." And in that moment, it struck me. That was the first time in weeks she'd said it without anger or exhaustion tainting the syllables. Just my name, as if she had suddenly remembered it belonged to a person, not a mere placeholder in her life. I closed the suitcase slowly, zipping it with deliberate care, then walked to the hallway closet. I pulled out the old duffel bag with the busted zipper, the one I used on road trips before we were married. I figured I'd need it for the overflow, the small things she'd forget I owned until she stumbled across their sudden absence. She followed me from room to room like a ghost trailing her own guilt. She didn't raise her voice, didn't curse. She just whispered questions into the air, hoping the silence would eventually answer her. "You're really leaving just because of a dance? Are you even going to talk to me?" "Talk." I wanted to scream. I've been talking for years. In texts she never bothered to read. In dinners I cooked that went cold on the table. In kisses that landed on her cheek while her eyes remained glued to her phone. I had run out of words long before I ran out of love. By the time the first tentative rays of sun cracked through the window blinds, I had packed everything save one item, the photo frame on the dresser. Us, on our wedding day, her head tilted toward mine, my smile still blissfully unaware of the timeline it was walking into. She picked it up before I could, clutching it to her chest, as if it were irrefutable proof that we once mattered. "I made a mistake," she whispered. I nodded. So did I. Her eyes searched mine, desperate. What was yours? I reached for the doorknob and paused, the answer forming slowly, thinking love was enough. Then I stepped out. She didn't follow, but I knew the tears didn't stop at 46 minutes. They were just beginning. The elevator ride down was silent, but my mind was a cacophony. Each floor that ticked by felt like it was peeling away a version of myself I no longer wanted to carry. When I reached the bottom and stepped out onto the street, the air felt heavier than it had hours earlier. My car was parked 2 blocks away, and I walked slowly, half expecting her to run after me, half desperately hoping she wouldn't. She didn't. The city still slept, cloaked in dawn's bluish haze. A street lamp flickered above me, humming as if it held a secret. I tossed the suitcase into the trunk, slid into the driver's seat, and simply stared at the steering wheel for a long time. The only sounds were the soft ticking of the dashboard clock and the slow, inevitable collapse of everything I thought I'd built. When I finally drove off, I didn't head to a friend's house or a hotel. I drove to the old apartment I rented in my 20s, a place I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. I parked across the street and stared at the window that used to be mine. Someone else lived there now. New curtains, a potted plant on the sill. But for a few precious moments, I imagined being that version of myself again. The version before I loved her, before I convinced myself that tolerating emotional starvation was some noble form of commitment. I slept in the car that night, not because I had nowhere to go, but because I truly didn't know where I was supposed to go. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't a man in a marriage. I was just Clifton. In the morning, I texted my sister, told her I needed a place for a while. She replied in all caps, "Get here now." I'd never truly articulated what had been happening. Not really, but perhaps she always knew. People can smell heartbreak on you, even when you drown it in loyalty. As I pulled away from the curb, my phone buzzed. Her name illuminated the screen. I didn't open it. Not yet. Let her sit in the silence she had handed me for years. Now it was hers to carry. My sister's guest room had pale yellow walls and a bed that squeaked if you even breathed too hard. It smelled faintly of lavender and dust, like a memory undisturbed for years. I didn't unpack right away. I just placed the suitcase in the corner and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor as if answers were etched into the carpet. I remained silent for most of that day. My sister tried to coax me into talking, but I dodged every attempt with weak smiles and mumbled, "I'm fine." But I wasn't. I felt like I had left pieces of myself scattered all over our apartment, pieces I couldn't retrieve even if I yearned to. That night, I finally opened her message. It was short. "Please, let's talk." Talk. What was left to talk about? I scrolled back through our texts over the years. Most of them revolve around groceries, bills, or what time she'd be home. It struck me how our conversations had slowly shriveled from paragraphs to single-word replies. Somewhere along the way, we had ceased being partners and devolved into project managers. Just two people coordinating the logistics of a life neither of us seemed to be enjoying. Still, something pulled at me. Not hope, but a morbid curiosity. I needed to see what she would say when I wasn't physically in front of her. I called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice soft, almost relieved. "Cliff," she said. But then, just as I was about to speak, I heard her whisper something else. "Mark, I'll call you back." I didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't even move. She thought she'd muted me, but she hadn't. She was still with him. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, fully. She hadn't let go, not for a single second. She just wanted to know if I was still holding on, just in case he dropped her. I hung up without a word. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from a profound, burning humiliation. She hadn't just broken our marriage. She'd replaced me mid-sentence. I didn't sleep that night, not even a wink. My body was exhausted, but my mind relentlessly replayed the exact tone she used when she said Mark. It wasn't awkward or guilty. It was effortless, natural, as if she'd said it 1,000 times before, in the same soft way she used to say Cliff when we still mattered. My heart didn't break again. It simply stopped trying to put itself back together. By morning, I couldn't sit still. I walked to a nearby diner, needing to feel like I was doing something. I ordered pancakes I didn't touch and coffee that quickly turned cold. The waitress, a kind woman, asked if everything was okay. I smiled the way people do when they're unraveling quietly. Yeah, I said, catching my breath. I paid in cash and walked aimlessly, eventually finding myself in a strip mall parking lot for no real reason. That's when I pulled out my wallet and noticed something I hadn't seen before. A crumpled receipt wedged behind my insurance card. Not mine. It was from 2 weeks ago, a bar I'd never heard of. 2 drinks, 1 appetizer, and a dessert for 2. Pay by card. Her card. I flipped it over. In her familiar handwriting. Next time, Tuesday. My stomach sank. I hadn't searched for this. I hadn't snooped. I wasn't digging through her things like some paranoid cliche. This had simply been buried in my wallet. Probably during one of those mornings she borrowed it to run errands. And now here it was, a time-stamped, signed piece of undeniable proof. She hadn't slipped. She hadn't made a single bad decision in a weak moment. She had scheduled him in, like a meeting, like a routine. I stared at that receipt for what felt like an hour, then finally folded it and placed it in my shirt pocket. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed to carry the truth physically, not just emotionally. When I got back to my sister's house, I opened the door, walked straight to the bathroom, and threw up. It wasn't just the cheating. It wasn't even a name slip. It was the planning. She didn't lose me by accident. She had removed me on purpose. Later that evening, I opened her message again, the one that pleaded, "Please, let's talk." I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if rereading it would somehow make it feel different, like perhaps I'd missed some hidden desperation between the letters. But it still felt flat, too clean, like a business email attempting to sound human. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Spotify and played the first thing that appeared on our shared account. It was a playlist titled Morning Vibes. I clicked out of habit. Something neutral. Something safe. But track 3 shattered that illusion. It wasn't one of ours. It was that song, the one I'd heard playing softly at the party from the balcony. The one I remembered her humming under her breath when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The lyrics were too specific to be a coincidence. I tapped into the playlist history. It had been edited 3 days ago. A dozen new songs. Songs I didn't recognize. Songs I hadn't chosen, hadn't shared with her. Each one a quiet breadcrumb leading back to him. She'd made a playlist for her affair. A soundtrack for her betrayal. I sat there, stunned, my phone trembling in my hand. I hadn't cried since leaving. Not when she whispered Mark's name. Not when I found the receipt. But this stupid digital mixtape. It undid me. Because music was our thing. When we first moved in together, we made a playlist for every mood. One for cooking, one for road trips, one for rainy days in bed. We used to take turns adding songs, leaving each other little messages in the titles. And now she was doing that, but for someone else. And worse, she hadn't even bothered to hide it. It was right there on our account, as if she forgot I still existed. Or maybe she assumed I wouldn't care. Like I just fade out quietly, hum along, and disappear. I wanted to delete the playlist, but I didn't. Instead, I renamed it. You Broke Me to a Beat. Then I logged out, not just from the app, but from the last fragile piece of us I hadn't already walked away from. It was around 2 a.m. when my phone lit up again. Not her this time. Her mom. That threw me. I hadn't spoken to her in months. Not since that awkward dinner where I could tell they'd had a fight before arriving and try to mask it with forced smiles and too many compliments about my cooking. I let the call go to voicemail, but then she called again and again. The third time, heart pounding, I picked up. "Clifton," she said, her voice tight and rushed. "Are you okay?" No one had asked me that in a real way for a long, long time. "I'm fine," I lied. "Why?" There was a pause. She exhaled, like she was deciding whether or not to cross a line. She showed up here, crying. Said you left without explaining. That you won't answer her. That you're being cold. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Cold. I wasn't cold. I had been melting for years. I told her mother, calmly, almost too calmly, that I had seen enough, heard enough, found enough. That her daughter had emotionally walked out on me long before I ever packed a bag. Silence, then a soft, tired sigh. I was afraid of that. That stopped me. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Clifton, I love her. She's my daughter, but I've seen her do this before. Build walls and find exits. You just stayed longer than most. I sat on the edge of my borrowed bed, stunned. She's not well, her mom continued. And you? You always looked like someone trying to save a person who didn't want saving. I didn't know what to say. I had spent years convincing myself that things would improve if I just loved harder, tried harder. But now, here was the woman who raised her, confirming I was never fighting a fair battle. She asked me if I was planning to come back, if I was going to give her a chance to explain. I think she already did, I replied, with every silence, every lie, every song. I hung up before she could answer. Then I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering why closure always arrives long after love has already left the room. 2 weeks later, I sat at a small coffee shop in a town that didn't know me. I had taken some time off work, packed my car with what little I needed, and just drove until I felt something like air in my lungs again. I was still sleeping light, still waking up from dreams where she was laughing with someone else, looking at me like I was the intruder. But I was breathing, and that was enough. I had written her a letter, not to send, just to write. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was honest. I told her that I had loved her in a way I didn't think I could love anyone, that I had built my world around her, not realizing she had been building an exit the whole time. I told her I wasn't innocent either, that I stayed silent when I should have spoken, let small things slide because I was afraid of losing her, even though I'd already lost her long before I knew it. But I ended the letter with something I never thought I'd say. Thank you. Not out of sarcasm, not as some dramatic farewell, but because she had forced me to see myself clearly for the first time in years. To stop begging to be chosen. To stop treating survival as love. I tore up the letter after I finished because I didn't need her to read it. I just needed to release it. Later that evening, I walked by a local bookstore and saw a flyer for a community writing group. I paused, then went inside and signed up. I figured if I could spend years crafting love letters to someone who never read them, I could probably learn to write something for people who might. A woman at the counter complimented my handwriting. It felt nice, like a small crack of light at the end of something heavy. Like maybe beginnings don't always need fireworks, just honesty. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone's abandoned husband. I just felt like me. Clifton died. Clifton's story is a haunting whisper from the wreckage of a marriage, a testament to the profound silence that can precede an absolute end. What moment from this harrowing journey resonated most deeply with you? Was it the observation at the party, the chilling discovery of the playlist, or the unexpected honesty from his mother-in-law? Share your reflections in the comments below. If Clifton's tale stirred something within you, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Echo Tales for more narratives that linger, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another whisper from the shadows. Until next time, stay vigilant, and remember, the quietest departures often leave the deepest scars.